So the term we use is situational safety. And the reason for that is that what we're trying to ensure is that people are thinking about their safety in any situation they're in. Any situation. It doesn't matter if it's at work, it doesn't matter if it's in an interview room at work, it doesn't matter if it's in a garage, it doesn't matter if it's a workshop. It also doesn't matter if it's in town on Friday night having a couple of beers with some mates, or at a nice restaurant having a meal, or walking back to your car. Or actually, we are aware of our safety, we are thinking about our safety in any situation we are in. So we're thinking about safety as being a holistic mindset rather than specific to a particular role we might be performing. We're always thinking about our safety. And what we need to recognise is that when we're around other people, when we're engaging with other people in work and in social events, whatever, when you engage with people, people pose risk. People pose risk because people are unpredictable. Humans are probably the most unpredictable animal on the face of the earth, generally. If you then go and add in some chemical stimulants into the mix, that unpredictability can increase pretty highly. So if we are going to engage with people, people pose risk. Of course, if we're engaging with people within a regulatory environment, that increases the risk because some people just don't like regulatory organisations. So the fact that you're engaging with them as a representative of NZTA, that increases the potential risk. And you have to face that risk as there. And you can't actually avoid that risk if you're going to do the job. If you're going to engage with people, you've got to accept the risk is there. Now, some people might try and avoid those risks. They're the people that lock themselves away in an office and try and avoid having to actually ever deal with people, public. In law enforcement, those officers are known as the Olympic flames because they never go out. But if you're actually going to do the job, you've got to accept that comes with a level of risk. The key is to manage that risk. It's to manage the risk. It's not about avoiding the risk. It's about managing risk. And if you think about it, life is all about risk management. It's not about risk avoidance, because if it was about avoiding risk, we'd never do anything. How many people were in some sort of vehicle to get to this course either today or yesterday coming down from home? How many people have been in a vehicle in the last 24 hours? Well, if it was about risk avoidance, no one would go in a vehicle. Because over 300 people a year are killed on New Zealand roads. Tens of thousands are seriously injured. Bugger that. If it was about risk avoidance, you just say, I'm not going on a vehicle again. Well, obviously, that's pretty impractical. But what you can do is you manage the risk. Look, it's obviously better to minimise the opportunity or prevent an incident from occurring in the first place through what we call situational incident management, and we'll look at what that means, than it is to have the incident kick off and then go, oh shit, what am I going to do now? How am I going to deal with this now? So it's around that, thinking about the fence at the top of the cliff, not the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. There's an interesting concept which I've just sort of come aware of, and it's quite a good book that's just come out. It's called Left of Bang. Have you ever heard of it? It's quite really interesting. And it's talking about our mindset and how we deal with potential risk. And so if you think of, and where it came out of is the US Marine Corps. There's bang. And on a timeline, you've got the time that leading up to the bang, and you've got the time post the bang. Okay, so this is right of bang. This is left of bang. And what they realised is for a lot of the military, all their training was focused on right of bang. That actually, okay, boom, there's been an IED go off, or boom, there's we're under attack, from an ambush. How do we react to that? How do we do it? Well, actually, the bang's already happened. And then one of the examples was a guy who was an IED technician, so a bomb disposal technician. And the way he described it is, he said, my only interest is left of bang. Because once it becomes right of bang, I'm no longer relevant to the... my participation in this incident is no longer really relevant anymore. And as it was sort of indicated, that those bomb suits they wear, they're not for protection. They're just to keep all the bits together, so it's easier to recover them. It ain't going to stop an IED. So actually, the concept is rather than thinking about, how do I deal with stuff right of bang, if it's going wrong, what I should be thinking about is left of bang. How do I minimise the opportunity for bang to go off in the the first place. So, and if you think about its skills and its techniques and its knowledge and its understanding, its equipment. So if you think about in a transport example, if you think about on a vehicle, let's think about a couple of safety features on a vehicle. Let's think about ABS braking and let's think about airbags. Which of those is left of bang and which is right of bang?
Airbag is right of bang.
Yeah, airbags are right of bang because they've only deployed once you've had the accident. ABS braking is left of bang. It's actually what may be the preventative measure rather than the reactive measure. So, and that's what we're trying to do around thinking about a potential of bang, whatever bang may be, something going wrong. Well, let's actually think about left of bang. Let's think about how we can reduce the opportunity for it to happen. Or we often get agencies come into us and say, can you come and do some de-escalation training for our staff? De-escalation. And we go, yeah, absolutely, we can come and do some de-escalation. But if we're starting at the point of de-escalation, we're starting here. We're starting here. It's already escalated. What we'd probably like to think about is how can we manage interactions so they don't escalate in the first place? How can we deal with this so it doesn't, or minimises the chances of it escalating?
We actually have an escalation process that we see that everybody has.
Right.
We take them through it.
Yes.
So if we're actually trying to look after the VI or
Yes.
the IO, if someone was coming to angry, he's actually got a process
To
follow,
go through.
and we call it the escalation process.
Right,
We
right.
take them through that.
Cool, excellent. So,
That would be the left.
well, it depends. If they've already come in angry, they're already at bang.
Okay.
So it might be, if they've already come in angry, you may not be able to influence that because they've come in. But perhaps, for example, is when you are dealing with a person doing an inspection and you have to give them some bad news, how you can deal with that in a way that it reduces the bang from happening. How can I communicate with them in a way that it keeps it left? It keeps it left. So it's just an interesting concept that prevention is always going to be better than cure. Prevention's left, cure's right of bang. And I guess, again, as a safety regulator, your focus is obviously left, isn't it? You don't want to have to go and investigate after something's gone horribly wrong. You actually want to minimise the opportunity for things to go wrong in the first place. Look, safety is a state of mind. And I am the first to acknowledge, as a young officer, I never had a safety mindset. It's just not something that really featured that highly for me. My mindset was all around how fast I could do the job, how much fun I could have, how much excitement I could generate, how many four-wheel drives, quad bikes, boats and helicopters I could involve in a single day's patrolling. And if I could get all four, that was a cracker of a day. That was a really good day. It was all rip, shit and bust. It was the other name we have for that mindset is the Nike mindset. Any idea what the Nike mindset is? Just do it. That was my mindset, just do it. And it wasn't until I was in the middle of a couple of really nasty situations that were heading right of, we were well right of bang, that I'd start thinking, shit, I wonder if there was another way I could have approached this. I wonder if there's another way I could have dealt with this. Well, it's a bit late at that point. I should have been having that thinking, well before it ever got to that point. We should always be thinking safety first. There's absolutely no higher priority. The 999 rule, or the 1 in 1,000 rule is the other name for it. And it's a really important number, and it's a number that you'll hear me refer to multiple times through the course. 999. Leave it up there. What do you think that number would have to do with safety, dealing with the public, the concept of the 999 rule or the 1 in 1,000 when you're dealing with people, dealing with situations, keeping yourself safe? What would be the relevance of that number, do you think?
999 times it's not going to go wrong, but one time it will.
Absolutely. And, of 1,000 people, 999 of them, they're okay. They're okay. And I think it's really important to remember that most people we deal with are okay. They're okay people. They might vent off a bit of frustration and they might bloody, get a bit frustrated and call you a few names and they might sort of wave their arms around a bit and, but actually fundamentally most people are okay. For most people there is a line in the sand that they're not going to cross. They might get right up to the line. They might look over the line, see what's on the other side. They might even test the elasticity of the line a bit. You know, give it a bit of a nudge with its big toe and see if they can sort of push the line a little bit. But fundamentally, they're not going to cross the line under normal situations. Most people are okay. And I think it's really important we remember that. But of course, ultimately, our safety is not determined by how we deal with the 999 good people. They don't ultimately determine our safety. What ultimately determines our safety? It's how we deal with the one, how we manage the one, how we manage that interaction. That one person who may look and sound like the other 999 initially, but going on behind their eyes is a whole lot of shit that just doesn't go on behind the eyes of most normal people. They have a very different view on the world, what the world owes them, the entitlement sort of mindset, entitleitis it's called. It's quite a serious medical condition these days, entitleitis. And they certainly have a very different view on what they would be prepared to do to get what they want from a situation. Look, there are some very, very dangerous people out there. There's not a huge number of them, and the number will change depending on sometimes the location that you're in, the sector you're dealing with. It'll go up or down depending on, But the principle is there are some very dangerous people out there. Not a lot, but we've got to think about how are we managing those interactions. Now, a lot of people say, well, shit, I've been doing the job for 10 years or 15 years or whatever it is, 20 years. I've never had a problem. Why are we doing this training? Well, you're probably doing a whole lot of stuff really, really well. Or it also could be you just haven't come across the one yet. You just haven't come across, or you have come across them, but you haven't come across them under the circumstances that would trigger that extreme behaviour they are capable of. We always talk about the perfect storm scenario, and the perfect storm is you get the wrong person on the wrong day under the wrong set of circumstances, and potentially you could be dealing with a very, very dangerous situation. And ultimately, it's those situations or those people that actually determine our safety. It's that one somewhere in amongst the crowd. And I guess it's, again, when you think about safety in terms of trips, 999 trips you make in a car are fine. But it's the one that suddenly something happens that you're not expecting goes wrong. It's how do we deal with those ones? The first rule of dealing with the public, and someone's already talked about it. What do you think is more important than anything else? What's this course all about? Safety. The first rule of dealing with the public, get home safely at the end of your day. That's the first rule. Look, we want to do the job efficiently, we want to do it professionally, we want to do it effectively, we want to do all that stuff. But more than anything else, we've got to get home at the end of the day. We've just done a whole lot of training 12 months ago for Wellington Free Ambulance officers. Now, if there is one group in New Zealand that we should not have to train in keeping themselves safe, it is ambulance officers. We should not have to train them. Because I always say, look, if you're a regulator, some people aren't going to like you because you're going to turn up and you're going to give them some news that they don't want to hear and you're going to piss them off. And there is only ever one reason why an ambulance officer ever turns up to any job. What is the one reason an ambulance officer turns up to a job to do? Yeah, help people. That's all they are ever there to do. They are there to help people. And yet they are being assaulted on an incredible, occasion. It's just terrible. Anyway, one of the hardest jobs or hardest challenges we had was getting ambulance officers to think about their own safety because they have this inherent desire to help people. And I think the way we finally sort of got, because they'd say, well, if we don't go in, someone could die. Yep, and that would be a tragedy. However, you have to assess your safety. And the way, but they go, oh yeah, but if we need to, And I guess the way we sort of said it is, look, if you go in and ultimately you're unsafe and you get seriously injured, you can't help my family tomorrow because we're going to be relying on you being work tomorrow. And I'm going to be relying on you being able to help my family next week or the week after or the week after that. So sometimes we've got to look at that long-term safety. We have to go home at the end of our days.